Hello and welcome to the National Leadership Briefing. My name is Doug Sharp and I will be your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. For the new people that are joining us today, we welcome you. We thank you so much for you taking the time, committing 1 hour. We want you to know also that 1 hour time commitment that you've made will be respected, and we will make sure to get you out at exactly the right time 1 hour from now. However, we've got an awful lot to cover today, but we're going to slow it down a bit because oftentimes the pace is a little bit quick here on the briefing, but we're going to slow it down a bit when we start talking about certain segments, because we've got some pretty serious times upon us now here in Canada, and there are some serious issues before us that need us to suss out and have a full understanding as to what our opportunities are ahead of us and where the threats are. And that's what much of the briefing today is going to be focused on. We have a theme of a desire today to present to you opportunities and threats that are before us on the road ahead, and ones that we need to prepare for. So where we're going to start today, before we get into the review of the agenda, is I'm going to remind you of a segment that we did that presented you with a few different ideas. First of all, the 4 pillars. As you know, if you've been here before, and if you're new, this might be new to you, but what we do here is we rally around 4 principles that are expressed in the form of 4 pillars. So I'm going to remind you of that in this quick video. I'm also going to remind you of the training segment that we did that spoke to the importance of you locally accepting responsibility for where you are locally and respecting the place that you hold as the center of influence within your sphere of influence, and the need for you to grow that influence you have locally. Plus, we're going to dovetail right away in that video into a presentation explaining what we call horizon training. And that actually talks about how we prepare for those distant opportunities and threats before us on the National Leadership Briefing, so that when we meet them, we're prepared as we can be to capitalize on them or defend against them. But let's get to the training video. It's just a few minutes long, and it is a video that is on our website at nlbcanada.ca. So if you want to review it again, feel free, but let's jump right into that video for now, and then we'll come back and talk about the agenda for the rest of the day. Thank you. Bye for now. These are the things that we believe in. First, that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. Second, that those we elect to serve us in civil government must respect and defend our right of belief and freedom of religion. Number 3, that the laws and policies of civil government must provide for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable among us. And number 4, that it is inappropriate to heap debt upon the backs of our children and future generations. They came from you. They're your pillars. They're the things that you believe. Well, this week we are going to dial our focus into a very, very specific part of what you and I do together, and that is the developing of what we call your sphere of influence. That is you locally looking for people around you that share your views and values that you can work with and stay in relationship with and serve when we have an opportunity to speak with a unified voice on the things that are important to us. And of course, we always want to advance the 4 pillars and the principles of the 4 pillars into society, culture, politics, and government. So whenever we see an opportunity to do that, we want to capitalize on it. Or whenever we see a threat to one of those principles, we want to prepare a defense against that. But you building your local sphere of influence is really important. You finding those alliances in your own community and in your own orbit of the people that share your views and values is a big part of our success. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything to help you if you have retention problems. And that's what we've been hearing from some of you, is that some people are telling us that they talk to people, they talk to neighbors, other people in the church, and they might say, hey, we've got this group gets coming together and we stand for parental authority and the right of belief and freedom of religion, and we want to protect the vulnerable. And of course, we're really, really conscious of the amount of debt that's being piled on the backs of our children and future generations. And you invite people to let you serve them, to keep them apprised of where they might have an opportunity to advance these things themselves as well. So that if we hear that you're having challenges growing your sphere of influence and growing your reach locally, we want to help. And we think we have a tip for you here today that's really going to help. Now, one thing that we found on the National Leadership Briefing is that things are moving awful fast all the time. We get together on the first Friday of every month. We always only meet for 1 hour, and then we have these midweek touch points during the week, throughout the week between the briefings. That's not a lot of time to get together, so we want to make sure we use the time to the best advantage, and sometimes we have to move fairly quickly. So when you introduce somebody brand new to the National Leadership Briefing and introduce them to the idea of coming together on a regular basis and rallying around these principles, then they are joining something or coming on board something that is moving quite quickly. So we've got to my first suggestion is to slow it down a bit when you introduce it to them and bring it to them in increments. Like introduce the idea first of the 4 pillars, for example. Start with the story. Tell them a little bit about the 4 pillars and what they're all about. Tell them there's a group that gets together on a monthly basis, and ask them if they'd like to join the next call. Now, when you get them on the next call, let them know before they come on the National Leadership Briefing, let them know that things move fast and that you don't want that to in any way scare them or startle them, but things move fast because there's an awful lot going on. But the third thing I want to point out to you, which is a really, really important tip, is this arch that's over my head that says Horizon right behind me, right? So here in the National Leadership Briefing, no matter what point it is that you join the briefing, that becomes your now, your present circumstance. That is when you are seeing the National Leadership Briefing for the first time. Well, what I'm going to suggest you do is when you do that is make sure you point out to the people that even though you're starting right now, we want you to think that off into the future, there's going to be an opportunity that we can capitalize on together to speak with a unified voice, or there might be something that is threatening to the things that we believe in, like parental authority, or that maybe there's more debt being piled on the backs of our children. But we want you to immediately tell people that no matter when they come on the National Leadership Briefing, that we are scanning the horizon always, looking for those opportunities and threats. And then what we're doing is we're using the road ahead of us to prepare ourselves to capitalize on that opportunity or defend against that threat. This is why we get together on monthly increments, is because bit by bit each month, we're preparing for that moment in time that we can see on the horizon when we need to speak and act in a unified way. Now, along the road there, I want to tell you what we're doing for you, and you can point this out to the people as well. You can let them know that we're going to screen out all the noise. We're going to make sure, because the time we have is so precious, is so brief each month, we're going to make sure that we're not going to let any of the noise, any of the mainstream media noise, there's going to be none of the political bias, and there's going to be zero ego, and it's all going to be focused on what we need to know to fully capitalize on the opportunity or defend against the threat in the future. And we're going to focus on the signal, the things that we definitely need to know, the hard facts, the data. We're going to do the right training that we need to do to be fully prepared at that time. So if you are having a difficult time with people popping on the briefing and popping off the briefing, I encourage you, please consider focus on and understand, letting them know that here it is, you're starting right now. We understand that things move fast, but we want you to really, really stick around long enough to understand and see the opportunities and threats that we're preparing for in the future. And of course, the best way to do that is to register the people for the National Leadership Briefing so they themselves can get that incremental brick by brick understanding along the way without feeling overwhelmed all at once. So that's my suggestion for you today is get people registered, let them know it moves a little quickly, have them focus on the horizon and tell them everything's going to be fine. And if you walk that road with them and are always just encouraging them and helping them along, I think you'll find the retention in your own local sphere of influence is going to be much higher. Okay, well, what you saw there was a snippet or a sample of 4 of the training videos that are available on the National Leadership Briefing website. Now, what we call these are NLB Essentials. If you are new to the briefing or if you have not seen the NLB Essentials menu page on our website, then I encourage you to go there because there are 4 videos. There are 4 pieces of training that we encourage everyone to participate in. They're just a few minutes long. It doesn't take much time at all, but it gives you a very clear understanding as to who we are and why we're here on the National Leadership Briefing and what our goals and objectives are. So you've got the understanding of the 4 pillars, of course. You've got the importance of your sphere of influence and the need for you to grow your influence by growing your sphere, by actually adding people to who you're connected to locally and plugging them into the National Leadership Briefing so that we can help show them what it is that are opportunities and threats on the horizon. And that's the Horizon training video. So please go to the NLB video or NLB website, go on the menu page to NLB Essentials, and you will find the training videos there. Also want to remind you that there's also the CAG ministry videos. That's Citizen Action Group ministry videos on the National Leadership Briefing as well. And that is for church leaders and for people in churches who feel called to help their pastors understand the complexities and how to navigate on the political and governmental landscape, not only locally, but also provincially and nationally. There's some videos there and an offer from a church to help you establish your own CAG ministry in your church to accomplish those things. So I look forward to hearing good news back of you stopping by the website and checking that information out. Okay, what are we going to be doing today here? First of all, we are going to be spending an awful lot of time on the political and government landscape. Obviously, we want to help you with language tracks and being able to communicate your views through using the proper language for the 4 pillars. We want you to be able to articulate to your neighbor over your fence that you just simply have a desire to be left alone by government as you raise your children the way you want to. We want you to be able to express in using secular language the importance of your right of belief, and we can always help you with that. But today, we're not going to be focusing so much on society and culture, more so on the political and government landscape, because there is great influence that they're having over our lives right now with some of the things that are coming up and coming at us on the horizon. So we're going to start there, and we're going to introduce you to a gentleman by the name of Scott Hayward of RightNow. We're going to be talking about in the political landscape, what's happening there, some of the opportunities, some of the threats. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the other opportunities and threats. Just pop over to the boardroom and have a look at some of the other things that are coming at us, and then pop back to the desk to actually introduce you to a segment that I recorded with a pastor who had it on his heart to help people communicate to their members of parliament. And it was just a real good conversation, and he had some really good ideas. So I want to make sure that we're sharing that with you today. And then I'm going to actually, we're doing another book review today, and I'm going to encourage you to pick up this book again, because boy, is it ever a good one. And I'm so happy to share it with you. So that's what we're going to be working on today. But first, let's kick it off by introducing you to Scott Hayward of the organization RightNow. Wow, good to have him back. Well, Scott Hayward, thank you so much again for joining us on the National Leadership Briefing. It's always good to have you on. You are one of the premier guys on the political battlefields here in Canada, and we just so respect your opinion, and it's good to be with you again.
Yeah, thanks, Doug, for having me on, and thank you for the overly kind words, I will say.
Can't help it. I'm a fan. Now, you and your organization, it starts right now. Absolutely. You guys are doing a ton out there, but you're obviously people as well that are looking out onto the horizon here, like a ways out into the future, and you're preparing yourself on the road ahead to capitalize on opportunities and threats that might be out there. And that's what we're focusing on in today's National Leadership Briefing. So let's break our conversation up, if you don't mind, Scott, into first talking about opportunities and then get into some of the threats that might might be on the horizon as well that might be coming at us. So what do you see as some opportunities that are coming up on the political and governmental landscape ahead of us here in Canada for people of faith?
Sure. No, that's a great question, Doug. And maybe we'll start off with what we've already accomplished very recently. So, for example, in earlier this year in 2021, in March 2021, the Conservative Party of Canada had their national policy convention. Of course, it was virtual, and we had a good number of pro-lifers and those that share our views and values present at that convention. And we were able to accomplish some things. We were able to get some things changed in the party constitution to make it easier for those who share our views and values to participate fully within the party. We got some policy through. We stopped some bad policy coming through. But one of the most important things is we got elected almost a majority of national councillors who more or less are the board of directors for the Conservative Party of Canada. And going forward, that's going to be a very important party organ coming up. And then in the federal election, some people might not be super happy with the results. However, one thing I think most people can be happy with who are watching this video is that we were able to actually increase the number of pro-lifers elected from 68 in the 2019 election to 74 in the 2021 election. So it's not a huge jump per se, but given how difficult of an election I think it was for a lot of people for a variety of reasons, I'm actually quite impressed that we were able to increase the number of pro-lifers sitting in the House of Commons. So I just want to highlight some of those accomplishments in the very recent past that we've been able to work on and succeed on together, and how that plays into some opportunities. So, coming forward here, there's going to be another party policy convention for the Conservative Party of Canada, as well as other political parties provincially and federally as well. And we see that when we participate in these conventions, that we actually are able to accomplish what we need to accomplish. But Doug, I think perhaps one of the things, and maybe I'm jumping into a threat a little bit too early here, but one of the shortfalls that we had as a movement of those who share our views and values in the last policy convention was at the EDA level. So that's the Electoral District Association. That is your local riding board of directors. Every 338 ridings has a board of directors for each political party federally. They're the ones that run the affairs of the party locally in that riding. But in addition to that, for most federal parties, including the Conservative Party, they're the ones that decide who the delegates are going to be going to convention. And they also decide, from the thousands of policy proposals that come in, they're the ones that kind of whittle it down to those 100 or 70 that are going to be debated at convention. And so if we, whether we're pro-life or those who share views and values, if we're not present on those EDA boards of directors, we're missing out. So as much as there's every opportunity there is out there for us politically, the flip side is if we don't get involved, there's going to be a threat.
Absolutely. Well, I love what you guys at RightNow did, and I share this everywhere. I carry a copy with me, and I make sure people receive it. But this EDA guide that you put out, I'm going to send it out again today in the post briefing notes. This EDA guide helps people to understand what goes on at the Electoral District Association board level and how you can get involved locally so you can see firsthand those opportunities, because these are the first people that really start to react when they see those opportunities to have influence on the horizon ahead, like going to policy conventions, working with the local candidates and selecting the local candidates. And when you're on the board or at least tied in or connected to the board, it's really helpful. So I'll share this again, Scott. Excellent work.
There's different things we can do to ensure that we are having a properly represented voice on these very important EDA boards of directors.
Locally, right, locally. So you've got the local board of directors. That's an opportunity on the horizon that people can capitalize on. I'll get the guide out there. We've got a policy convention coming up. When is that next policy convention, Scott?
It's slated to be for the Federal Conservative Party. It's slated to be August of 2023, likely in Quebec City.
Right. Okay, fantastic. Now we've got that coming up, and we're going to be talking on the road ahead about how to prepare for that. Any other opportunities that you can see? I know there's a lot of people that came out of the election that were kind of concerned about the direction the leader took the Conservative Party, and they're asking the question, are there opportunities out there? I mean, is there a chance that we'll have a new leader of that party in the short term, or is there something that is a process that we could be preparing for?
Yeah, there's different ways within the Conservative Party of Canada. Each political party has their own methodologies in terms of dealing with leadership, whether it be reviews or replacements or what have you. So within the Conservative Party of Canada, there's a few different avenues if there is a need of a change of leadership. First and foremost, the easiest and quickest, of course, is if the leader resigns. A leader says, you know what, I've done what I can. I've taken this as far as I could. And I think now is a good opportunity for someone else to step in and see what they can do. So that's the easiest, cleanest way. One of the other ways is something called the Reform Act. And what the Reform Act allows for is after each election, when a caucus of a party, so a caucus is all the senators and members of parliament of a particular political party, get together for their first caucus meeting, which they usually have about once a week when the House is sitting, and the Senate as well when Parliament's sitting. The very first caucus meeting, they get to vote on whether or not they want to give themselves as caucus certain powers and certain privileges. And then another thing that they give themselves the power for, and the Conservative Party of Canada did this, and it's the first time this ever been done since the Reform Act was passed almost 10 years ago, is they have the ability to also recall the leader. So if 20% of caucus members sign a public letter that's then posted online for at least 48 hours present, there will then be a vote, a secret ballot vote by all members of caucus. And if 50% plus one vote to recall the leader, then that leader is no longer leader of the party, and then immediately there would be a leadership election review. So that's one avenue. And then a third and kind of final avenue is within the Conservative Party of Canada, there's something called a referendum. So if 5% of party members, so you have to be a party member for at least 21 days, sign on to a petition in at least 5 provinces or territories, so 5% in those provinces or territories, then within a 90-day period, then you take that to National Council. National Council then must have a referendum on that question from that petition within 120 days from receiving and accepting a valid petition. Right. And then at that referendum, it's open to all members of the party. You just need to be a member of the party for 21 days. Right. And then if 2/3 of those party members vote, or 1/3 vote and 2/3 vote in favor of the referendum, then that referendum question is binding. So if you have a referendum question saying, should we have a leadership review, or should we immediately begin the leadership selection process for the party, and 2/3 of party members vote yes in that, then that is actually binding upon the party. So there's different avenues. Some are much easier and cleaner and quicker than others. But it'll be interesting to see, what's happening out there.
Absolutely, and that's actually a good segue into the threat side of the conversation as well, because when we talk about coming out of the last election, we learned a lot about what can happen if people have a lackluster level of energy in supporting a party or a leader like the Conservative Party of Canada, and where their votes might drift to other parties. And we had a situation where we had many votes bleed off onto into the People's Party of Canada, and no fault of theirs, by the way. I want to make it clear, at National Leadership Briefing, we don't look at the efforts of People's Party of Canada candidates, or the leader, or that party itself, and say, your presence on the political landscape is unwelcome. No, basically, I think you said it, is the people didn't leave the Conservative Party of Canada. The Conservative Party of Canada left them, and so we have now these two parties. This is a threat to this division on the right side of the political spectrum. Can you just share your views on where do you see us at now with the People's Party of Canada and the Conservative Party of Canada? And you know what? Derek Sloan is still out there and talking about a party. So I don't know. I mean, we're going to see another party perhaps on the right side of the political spectrum as well.
Well, let's start with Derek Sloan first. And like, I have nothing against the guy, but Derek Sloan chose which riding he wanted to run in for the 2021 federal election. He spent something well over $100,000 just in that riding, and he got 2% of the vote. So that's not mathematically really a winning formula right there. I have no idea if he's going to set up his own political party or not, but so far, not off to a great start.
Right.
And then regarding the People's Party of Canada, I was hearing from lots of conservative candidates, pro-life and otherwise, that they were bleeding all kinds of votes to the PPC. And one of the biggest reasons was because under the current leader and the leadership team, they were not embracing the policies that we as members of the party, for those of us who are members of the party, passed at previous policy conventions saying, this is the direction we want you to go in. This is what we believe. Ignoring that policy document and really not drawing a whole lot from it. Of course, naturally, there was a bleed to the PPC. So in my riding, where I live in Southern Ontario, we didn't have a pro-life conservative candidate where my wife and I live. So neither the conservative candidate or the PPC candidate were pro-life, but in my riding, I voted PPC. When we look at the actual numbers, so this taking as much bias out of it as possible.
Yeah, and a lot of the emotion, because what happens is people get passionate about I'm so angry with the Conservatives and I'm for the PPC, but then you really have to swing us all back to reality, Scott. So bring us right down to the facts of the matter.
Yeah, let's just go to brass tacks. Like, these are the numbers, so there's no bias. We're trying to be as dispassionate about this as possible. So in the 2021 election, the PPC obviously didn't win any seats. They did increase their vote from 1.6% just under 5%. So still not a huge percentage of the vote. They came in second in only 7 ridings. And in those 7 ridings, the average loss margin, so the average number of votes that they lost by, was 24,000, which is a huge percentage of the vote.
Right. So can I just want to drive that one point, because you said something that's pretty shocking, that there's 338 electoral districts or ridings in Canada, and in only 7 of them, the PPC candidate came second to the person who won. And the average vote count that they lost by in those 7 ridings was 24,000 votes. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So this is like, again, brass tacks. We're talking about how far away are we when you're looking at the People's Party of Canada, and you know what? Again, love them. I know so many friends that are engaged in that party and working hard, but how far away are they from forming a party, establishing the infrastructure required to challenge the current Liberal government, and bringing a united Conservative front under the banner of that party, if that was their showing in the last election?
Yeah, mathematically speaking, extraordinarily far away. In terms of being a viable vehicle for those that share our views and values to actually electing and getting our voices, and politicians who share our voices and want to amplify our voices in the House of Commons, the PPC is not, at least at this point in time, and mathematically speaking, is not a viable vehicle to do that. And we, like you, Doug, and your organization, our organization, others, we have to operate in the realm of reality, whether we like it or not, and make the best decisions to have the highest return on investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And because we've been around, we can pretty clearly see where there is, and I mentioned infrastructure, vehicle. That's another good way of looking at it. The Conservative Party infrastructure is a vehicle, and what we're suggesting is we're going to change the people who are in the vehicle. Like why go out and buy a new car when this one runs fine? We just got the wrong person at the wheel, or we got to put different nominated candidates in, or we've got to put new people on the boards that are locally. Everything's already established. We just have to engage in the processes that are already there, operate the vehicle that already exists, as opposed to building a new one. So yeah, I'm glad that we talked about that for sure. Is there any other threat that you can see on the horizon as well, as we're approaching this next election opportunity, if we don't unify as a I guess people on the political spectrum, on the right side of the political spectrum?
Yeah, I think it's a lack of engagement, right? So I know a lot of people complain to me, and to be frank, rightfully so. Like they'll say things like, "Oh, the Conservative Party of Canada, they're not quite conservative enough, or they're not pro-life enough, or anything like that." And there's definitely elements of that are true, probably more so today than 2 years ago. But the way to fix it is by looking yourself in the mirror. Like, what are you actually doing about it? Like, are you on your EDA board of directors?
Yeah.
Did you go to convention? What did you actually do to make it more reflective of your views and values? And to be frank, probably more reflective of the views and values of the 5.5 million people that vote and donate to that particular political party anyway. Because if you're not actually engaged in the trenches and doing that fight, which we're there to help you with, then of course it's not going to be reflective of you. And so the way to change that is to actually get involved in the parties, to get involved at the EDA levels, to get involved in going to convention. And then eventually more of us who share our views and values will be part of those people who work at HQ, who work at OLO. And like you said, Doug, like the bus is already there. Why build a new bus? Just hop onto the bus. And if we need to boot out the driver, we boot out the driver and take the wheel ourselves and change direction of where it's going to go to perhaps a much better place. To start a whole new political party and to build it from the ground up and all this other type of stuff is very, very, even the age of social media and whatnot, is very, very difficult to do that in this country. So, if we're thinking like, I only have so many hours every month to invest into volunteering and doing this sort of stuff, be very wise, be very intelligent about the way you're investing your time. Because if you're investing it into a mathematically losing proposition, then you might as well not do anything at all.
Right. Good points. Really good points, Scott. And we talk about here on the National Leadership Briefing all the time that as soon as we enter the room, when it comes to a political party, the party becomes more like us just by our presence, just by virtue of the fact that I'm walking in the room. All of a sudden, first principles of conservatism become the priority that much more. So we're just trying to get as many people in the room as possible. Can you imagine, Scott, if we mobilize just a small fraction of the people out there that we know are out there? We know we run into them all the time, but for some reason they kind of look at the whole political process and they go, yeah, it's a little bit dirty or whatever. And they got that perspective. Well, just like you, Scott, you and I know this, right? It's more fun than people know, right? Like we have a riot, don't we?
Well, of course we have a riot because we win whenever we engage.
Exactly.
Like we win national council, we win EDA AGMs, we win different motions that we're passing. I think whenever it comes, we're going to win a leadership race outright for a federal political party. Like, let's just give a really quick, hard example, right? Let's go back to the EDAs. Maybe put up that guide again there,
you bet.
Doug. Yeah. So in the Conservative Party of Canada, again, using that as an example, you have 30 members of the party in your EDA that sit on the board of directors. And Doug, I know you know this because you have sat, if you don't already currently, sit on an EDA.
I've sat on one since I even found out there was one. I never miss an opportunity.
Exactly. And how many people typically come to EDA AGMs? Those are the
Not very many
meetings. That's where they elect the board of directors. We're talking about like the 30 people who usually sit on the EDA board of directors already, and maybe an extra 10 or 20 tops. If you think about like, if you're a church going person, for example, right, probably most people who are sitting with you or kneeling with you in those pews, probably the vast majority are pro-life. We'll think of like 5 or 10 families that go to your parish, that go to your congregation. And if they're 14 years or older and they're a resident of Canada, you don't even have to be a citizen of the Canadian Crown. You could be a permanent resident. And you'll be eligible to hold a party membership at 14 years old and vote and sit on these EDA boards. You get all those people together, you work up to the AGM, which happens every year, usually, this time in the autumn or in the spring. And we put together a bit of a slate. You're going to take over that board of directors lickety split. And that's a really small, hard example. And that local board of directors that we'll say in the EDA guide matters. It matters for party policy conventions. It matters for nominations for who will be the candidate.
Yeah, exactly.
And it also matters for as a feedback loop back to the party and to the leader. So that's a really quick example. It's not that difficult to do. You just need to do it. And that's an example of rolling up your sleeves and doing the hard work and being smart and being intelligent and taking over something and making sure that you have the proper representation on something that already exists, that is actually going to be effective and get someone who represents your views and values into the House of Commons, as opposed to joining something where mathematically you're so far removed from that being a reality that is just, you might as well just do nothing at all.
Exactly. Another good point. So I'm going to share that EDA guide, but Scott, I want people to be able to keep in touch with you on the immediate road ahead, because again, you're also someone who thinks horizon, right? So you're seeing all these things coming and you're going to be preparing your organization and the people you serve. How do we plug people into you at RightNow so that they can receive information from you as it becomes available?
That's a great question, Doug, and I appreciate the opportunity. The best thing for you to do if you're watching this video is just go to our website. It startsrightnow.ca. There'll be a little sign up there, or you can go to startsrightnow.ca/join_us. We're on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And feel free to get a hold of me personally, scott@itstartsrightnow.ca. That's my email address. Feel free to reach out to me if you think like, hey, you know what, I could put together 10 of my friends and sit on this EDA thing, or I like more information, or I'm intrigued. Don't hesitate to contact me. We'll work together. We'll get it done. And we're going to keep moving forward. Like I said, we had a really difficult election this past election, but we actually increased the number of pro-lifers in the House of Commons. That is the type of steps that we need to take forward. So let's amplify that. Let's build toward that pro-life majority in the House of Commons. And for those that share our views and values, to make sure that you're talking about threats, that terrible legislation coming down from the Liberals, whether it be, the resurrection of Bill C-10 or C-36 that threatens our civil liberties on the internet, or it could be like the Liberals' promise to take away the charitable status for pro-life organizations. So that's not just going to include, crisis pregnancy centers, those dealing with mothers in those really tough pregnancy situations and helping them through, not just to birth, but a few years afterward as well. But it's also going to include mosques, synagogues, gurdwaras, temples, as well as churches. All of those organizations, all those entities have charitable status, a vast majority of them which are pro-life, and that's being threatened as well. So just as much as there's an opportunity to get our people involved and making sure that we get those people elected to the House of Commons, the reverse of that coin isn't that they're just going to stay still for those who don't share our views and values. Right. They're actively going to come after us and come after our civil liberties and come after the vehicles that we have available to us to help women and to amplify our voices for our deeply held convictions, whether they be religious or otherwise. So that's the greatest threat, is not getting involved. And there's lots of opportunities to get involved. There's no reason not to get involved, and we're going to help you out. So contact us and we'll get you set up in that way.
Thanks, Scott. And I'll make sure that all those links are put in the post-briefing notes today. For those of you who didn't get your pens in your hands fast enough to write that down, I will make sure you can just easy click and send an email to Scott and get connected right away. Scott, thanks so much for spending time with us today. We just so appreciate the perspective that you have from your perch looking over the political landscape in Canada. And we know that you're going to help us a great deal on the road ahead.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.
Have a great day. Okay, so now let's have a look at some of the other opportunities and threats that are before us here on the National Leadership Briefing, and we'll do that over in the boardroom right after this video. Enjoy. Okay, good to be in the boardroom again, of course. And here we are with the opportunities and threats segment. Now, of course, we don't have a lot of time. This is where we speed things up and just review it by bullet points, because I really want to impress upon you today the sheer volume of opportunities that we have in front of us if we do rally, come together around the things that we believe in and speak with a unified voice. So let's take a look again at some of these opportunities. We talked about with Scott, of course, we talked about the policy conventions coming up, not just in the Conservative Party of Canada, but within all the parties. We're going to keep you apprised of how you can prepare on the road ahead to participate in those conversations and have seriously significant influence in the outcomes of not only the discussions, but the votes on what goes into the policy books of those parties. The second thing is we're going to be helping you to get onto the Electoral District Association boards, and I'm going to include that guide in the post-briefing notes again that Scott produced so that you can get a better understanding as to what goes on locally with your political parties and your candidates and your members of parliament. We're also going to get ready if there is an opportunity, which I believe there is going to be. There's going to be an opportunity very soon for us to have say in whether or not we want to have a leadership review within the Conservative Party of Canada. And on the road ahead, if that thing comes out like I think it's gonna, we are going to be preparing you to cast your votes as party members. Next, we also have an opportunity to engage in trustee elections. We've talked about in the past, but I want to remind you that the National Leadership Briefing has an individual who is a school board trustee, who has walked the walk, who has talks the talk, and is going to help you have influence locally, not only in the candidacy of the candidacy of people in those elections, but also helping you get them elected. So trustee elections, we have opportunities all across the nation. We also have the opportunity through our relationship with another individual who's an all-star to influence municipal bylaws to help bring to light the challenges that we have in our municipalities with illegal brothels, massage parlors, body rub parlors. There is a bylaw initiative that we have, and someone who's willing to work with local citizens, members of the church, even with their municipal government leaders to help implement bylaws to identify and rescue human traffic victims that operate within those brothels in their community. So that's an opportunity, again, that we can have. All you have to do is check the post-briefing notes and download the information, and we've got someone there to help you. Now, the meeting with your MP I'm going to talk about in a second, but let's go to threats. Okay, the threats that we have before us, of course, is division. If we do not get it together, especially on the political landscape here in Canada, we will be wandering around in the political wilderness for the next 40 years. So division is a threat to us. We need to find a way to come together. Distraction. There is so many distractions out there. And that's what I like about the National Leadership Briefing is our commitment to you is that we're not going to let the mainstream media noise get into our heads. We're going to be focusing only on signal. We're only going to be looking at the things that we need to know to advance the principles that are represented in the 4 pillars. We also have legislative assaults coming at us. Bill C6, Bill C10, Bill C36. If you don't know what those are, you're going to need to know what they are, and we're going to prepare for their return to Parliament later on this month when Parliament convenes again. Those bills are coming back. Now, they're going to have different numbers, but they're going to be the same scary things that were coming at us last session in the House of Commons. And of course, the big threat that I see the need for us to prepare for to ensure that it does not happen is us being shut out of the political conversations and the government conversations here in Canada, because there is a very focused effort to limit the amount of influence you and I have. That's why we're pushing back against this. That's why we're pushing hard against the expansion of civil government in the directions they're going, is because we do not want to have our voice limited as to what we can say and how well we can contribute to the conversations. We're not looking to take over the world. We just want to participate in the democratic processes of our nation. So those are opportunities and threats that are before us. Now, let's take a look at this as we transition back to the desk. We're going to go back to the desk because I want to introduce you to an individual who is a pastor who's given us a helping tool. Again, we're always talking about the opportunities and threats on the horizon, but we got to prepare you for that road. So again, let's take a look at the threat of the legislative assaults. You're going to have members of parliament that are going to be voting on these bills again, and this legislative assault that is going to be happening here is important for you to understand. And then you're going to be required to meet with your member of parliament. So we're going to help prepare you for that meeting over the course of the next couple of weeks, months, just so you can have confidence when you go in there. Well, this is one example of a way that we help prepare you for your meeting with the member of parliament. As a matter of fact, let's just go straight into that video right away, because I want to share it right now. And then we'll go back to the desk and finish up with a book that I want to share with you just to close things out. Super important book. Well, let's listen first to this pastor who's willing to help us prepare. Well, thank you so much, Pastor Kevin Cavanaugh, for joining us today on the National Leadership Briefing. As always, it is a pleasure to have you with us.
Well, I'm always delighted for any chance I can be with you. So thank you for having me today.
Well, it's good to have you, because you're somebody who has seen a need, and you've always been someone who wants to step out there and help fill that need. You always want to help serve others. And one thing that you have noticed, and something that you and I have talked about here, is that there's a lack of comfort out there in many citizens' hearts and minds about meeting with their elected officials, or even candidates that are potentially running, and having conversations about what's important to them. And so you and I talked, and you said that you've been actually having some great success in using a resource that you've developed to help bring a sense of ease to people about meeting with their members of parliament. Is that pretty much on spot?
Yeah, Doug, that's on spot. And you know what? The fact is that you and I know that people have in general, can be intimidated even to come to meet with their pastor, even when they love their pastor. Positions of authority, they do something to all of us, especially political authority. People can feel so intimidated. And so, yeah, I've created a resource to try to assist people to have a general sense of what to do and how to even approach it.
Well, fantastic. So what I'd like to do today for everyone who's joined the briefing here, and for anyone who's watching this video after the National Leadership Briefing was broadcast, is I'm going to hand the screen over to Pastor Kevin. And Kevin, if you'd share with us this presentation, I would sure appreciate it. And then what we'll do is we'll follow up after you finish.
Yeah, okay, Doug. So I'm going to do that then. And one other quick word that I would share, friends, is that this isn't coming out of some huge political background that I've had, or all kinds of experience that I have. Really, I've just gotten into the game on a deeper level recently, and in the last few years, and it's surrounded these things that I'll be talking about. In fact, this presentation was created specifically for Bill C-6, which is the federal conversion therapy bill. And this has been something deeply on my heart. I believe it's a game changer for the church in Canada, for Christians in Canada. This, in my opinion, my humble opinion, may be the greatest single threat toward Canadians' rights and freedoms to believe and act of any other bill in Canada. So I'm going to walk you through just very quickly this presentation in how to prepare for meeting with your MP. And it starts, friends, I hope you would say, you don't need to tell us that, Pastor, because we know to pray. I find that this is a step that we can actually assume, presume, and not have happen. We've got to pray. Without prayer, our meeting is senseless, friends. If God doesn't act, if God's not in it, if he doesn't move, it's not going to work. Listen, I've included scripture to each of these, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to read all the scriptures. And the second step and we're inviting Jesus into the situation, of course. The second step is to contact your MP their office. And the reality that I say to people, you're contacting by email or by phone, and I'm encouraging people to actually ask for a 15-minute, be precise, a 15-minute Zoom meeting. You want to actually meet with them, okay? And you're far more inclined to get a meeting on Zoom. Obviously, in person could happen, but not necessarily likely today with the COVID. Now, I just want to let you know, and you notice that I've used the Luke 18 on the persistent widow who just wouldn't give up. I'll tell you what, everyone that I've worked with have discovered that it's not near as easy to get a meeting with an MP as it ought to be, or as you might think it should be. So you're going to have to make multiple contacts. You're not, in most cases, you're not going to get an appointment in a week's time, friends, maybe not even 2 weeks' time. You're going to have to be persistent. The next step is to show honor to your MP, okay? And a spirit of honor. Listen, show honor to, the scripture tells us, show honor to whom honor is due. And regardless of how you feel about their politics, regardless of whether you agree or disagree, and I'd let you know that I've spoken to more MPs in the last 60 days than in my whole lifetime put together. And most of them have not been MPs of the party that I support. Okay. At the same time, I'm called to honor them. Okay. And to let them know that I appreciate them and that I know that their role is super challenging. I'm using this passage from Acts 24, where Paul was going to actually be tried before Felix. This was how Tertullius, the lawyer, okay, who turns into an early church father, who's actually trying Paul before he's the prosecutor, if you would. Look at how he approaches the bench, okay, so to speak. He uses honor, okay, and we can learn from that. We need to be honoring. The next thing that we need to do is that we need to express gratitude, right? Letting them know that we're thankful for their service, letting them know that we recognize that it's not easy to do what they do and that we appreciate them being public servants. Friends, here again, honor and gratitude open doors. And oftentimes when you and I approach this situation, we're a little tense. We can be a little upset. We're a little worked up, a little bothered. Perhaps we're a little intimidated, and that all affects us. These attitudes reverse that. If you're coming in with honor and gratitude, it's going to help you to stay in the lane that you want to be in. And then, you know, this is all about building a bridge, right? You're letting them know, this is very important, friends. You're letting them know you're not against a bill that protects people from being forced to believe or do anything against their will in that sense. We wouldn't support a bill for coercive active action of anything for any reason. So you're disarming them in the sense that you're letting them know, hey, I'm not trying to fight you. I'm not against you. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to combat the bill. What we're wanting them to know is that there is serious issues with the definition, and that's what we're concerned about. Now, as you notice here, this scripture, this is a great scripture. I've always loved this scripture, but in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that is in you, but do this, note, with gentleness and respect, okay? And that's what I'm really emphasizing here, if in fact you'll do it with gentleness and respect, you might just get the opportunity to share Christ. That's not the objective, but in this case, we're looking to build a bridge, but you never know what's going to happen when you operate according to the principles of the kingdom. Okay, now, the fifth thing that you're wanting to do is that you're wanting to actually share your concern, okay? Your concern is that the definition for Bill C6 is still too ambiguous, and it leaves too much room for broad interpretations that will negatively impact many, many people, from the LGBTQ as well as unbelieving Canadians, believing Canadians. This bill is not a good bill. Here's the sixth thing. I'm encouraging you to be very direct, okay? So you're going to actually say, dear Mr. MP or Mrs. MP, whatever their Mrs. MP, whatever their name is, I'm here to actually ask you to vote no at the third reading for the purpose that the definition can be altered. For now, that's about all I'm going to share. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm always grateful to be with you, Doug, on the leadership briefing.
Well, that is fantastic information, as I say, and just having the opportunity to hear from Pastor Kevin and helping us to prepare our heads and our hearts for meetings with members of Parliament, making sure that we have the foundation laid for a good meeting. We sure appreciate that information. We also think it's an excellent example of the kinds of information and the kinds of tools that we're going to be giving you on the road ahead to prepare for what it is that we can see coming on the horizon. We took our time today to take a look at some of the opportunities and some of the threats on the horizon. We know that they're ultimately going to be here right at our door. Some of them are at our door right now, but we do want to help you in every way we can prepare for those opportunities and defend against the threats. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to increase our influence along the way. So thank you so much for letting us share that today. I really enjoyed the briefing today myself. I hope you did too. Well, we have to wrap up now, but before I go, I just wanted to introduce you to this book if you were not already familiar with it. This is a book by Preston Manning, the iconic political leader of Canada. This is one of the biggest brains in the game. And this gentleman here has so much experience to share. And what he's done is he's written a book with that says, do something, and then gives you 365 different ways in this book that you can strengthen our nation. And he does it in such a positive and encouraging way. As a matter of fact, on the back of the book here, it says, there's an old saying that says that a Canadian optimist is someone who believes that things could be worse. So true. But I am an optimist who believes the future can be better if enough of us resolve to make it so. Well, that is so important to consider on the road ahead. It definitely isn't great, and it could be worse, but we can make it better if we just rally around the things that we believe in, look for those opportunities to speak with a unified voice, and make sure that we're advancing the principles that we know are going to produce positive results in the lives of our fellow Canadians, our neighbor. So thank you so much for letting me share this book. As a matter of fact, we're going to do something here on the National Leadership Briefing today. We, of course, encourage everyone to partner with us on the briefing, but for anybody who's going to partner with us and will take advantage of a link that I'm going to provide you today in the post-briefing notes, if you'll contribute and partner with us, a gift of $250 or more, I'm going to send you these two books so that you can not only read it yourself, but share it with a friend. Now, any level of partnership we'd be happy to accept. So please consider looking in the post-briefing notes today for the link, and you will see that it's going to be very easy for you to do so. And we will be able to continue our work here, serving you and serving your friends as you introduce them to the National Leadership Briefing. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you on the next midweek touch point and on the next National Leadership Briefing. However, in the meantime, God bless you. God bless your family, and may God continue to bless this great nation of Canada. Bye for now.